right, good morning. Today is Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, and the time is 8:07 a.m. The KIPP Texas Board of Directors meeting is now officially called to order. I'm Allison Thacker, Chair of the KIPP Texas Board of Directors. Board members present today are, please respond when I state your name. Gene Austin. Here. Bill Boyer. Here. Peter Brodsky. I believe he'll be virtual.
Yes, Peter is joining virtually.
Okay, Jennifer Canellis. Virtual, maybe. Cleve Glenn. Here. Glenn. Lauren Gore.
Here.
Pepe Guevara.
Here.
Dolores Lozano.
Present.
Gretchen Miller.
Here.
Ethan Phillips.
Here.
Patricia Ponton.
Here.
Shauna Ravensburg.
Here.
Sean Raymond. Maybe virtual later. Manolo Sanchez. Here. Alex Sharma.
Here.
Sarah Villarreal.
Here.
Velma Villegas. I see
Velma's
Velma.
there. Good morning, Velma.
Putting on her ears.
Yep.
Well, we see her virtually.
Yes.
And Darla Whitaker.
Here.
And myself, Allison Thacker. For the record, a quorum is present. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. We've made this meeting available for members of the public to view by Zoom. If we have members of the public watching this meeting, I welcome you. I remind you this meeting is for the board to deliberate and act, and unless you've previously signed up to speak, there's no public participation, but we appreciate you attending, and we'll now begin our agenda. I'd like to welcome our KIPP Texas staff, Seba Ali, Chief Executive Officer, Dan Caesar, Chief Schools Officer, Sun Han, Chief Financial Officer, Laura Howarth, Chief Operating Officer, Larry Gilroy, Chief Administrative Officer, Jenna Moon, Chief of Staff, Ann Scott, Chief Advancement Officer, Rona Simmons, Chief Academic Officer, and Ellen Spalding, Legal Counsel. Seba wants to kick us off today by sharing a few words.
Great. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I am excited for some very important discussion today. Just wanted to start out by expressing my gratitude for all of you and our gratitude collectively as a team. It is Board Member Appreciation Month, and you often do the work that doesn't get seen. You show up for our kids every single time, every single day. You are there to help thought partner with us, to get breakfast for our teachers, to help us make the most critical and important decisions in our organization. And so we just wanted to say thank you to all of you. You'll find a little card in front of you for you from a KIPPster. So please enjoy that. And we are going to get started today with our credo. So if you could please stand and join me in the credo. Oh, can we link arms? Because that's what we do.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Woohoo! Oh. This is post-COVID life. Fist bump.
Are you serious?
It's like a Twister.
Yeah.
At KIPP, we believe.
It's okay, I got you.
We believe
in the creation
of inspired lives,
produced
by desire, discipline, and dedication. We are not frightened by the challenges of reality, but believe that we can change our world and our place within it. We work, plan, create, and dream. Our talent, character, and integrity will be the tools we need to build a better tomorrow. We believe that we can take this place, this time, and the people here to empower our communities, create a more equitable world, and insist on a more just society. As a team and family, we will either find a way or make one.
Thank you. Well, let's keep this credo in mind as we move forward today. I'm going to take us to our mission moment this morning, but before I do that, I wanted to share a text that I just received. So this is Frank Cush writing to our executive team, telling us that Ruth Resendez, one of our alumni, who has been in our principal and training program, officially accepted the role of school leader next year at KIPP Academy Middle School. She is the first alumni in Houston to take over the school that she attended as a student. And she may be the first in the country to do that. We're checking on that. So congratulations to Ruth, and what a beautiful way to start our meeting this morning.
Ruth Salazar?
Resendez. Yep, she has been an assistant principal with us for a while. Yes, she was. Thank you for bringing that in the space, Christine. One of your peers. One of your teammates. Well, we're going to start with our next mission moment. So as you know, our students, many of them apply for a Questbridge scholarship. This is a scholarship that basically matches them, sort of like a medical residency match with a university or college, and it provides them basically a full scholarship to attend. It is a very prestigious scholarship. This year, I believe we had 9 recipients. By comparison, my kids' school, St. John's, had 0 this year. So, you know, they were like, we didn't get any of our kids in. And I was like, oh, I think we had 9. But this is the moment that this young lady finds out about her scholarship. So enjoy.
Basically an organization that about 2,000 people match out of the 20,000 people that originally applied. So it's very competitive. So let's check my presentation. Okay, ready?
She's a sister.
3, 2, 1. I matched to Carleton College, and I'm going to major in biology and very for the future I plan. So getting this Questbridge scholarship was part of this whole plan. The greatest impact I've had, they're so supportive. Mostly my English and math teachers. My math teachers help me with like SAT prep, my English and look over it and make any correction. And for the grades that I was able to submit to Questbridge too, like I would go and bother them like during their free periods and lunch periods just to help me figure out how I can bring my grade up or retake this assignment. And they didn't mind, they were really supportive, and they were there for all my shenanigans to say. And also the Path College and Career staff, they were really supportive, especially Miss Becker. She was my greatest supporter in all this. She would call me and text me to make sure like I'm done with this application. I submitted that application. So everyone in the school is just very supportive, and they just rooting for you the whole time. So.
Okay, what a great way to kick off our meeting. Thank you for sharing that, and thanks to Frank for sending us a notification, because of course our school leaders are so important to us, and it's particularly exciting to see KIPP students coming and being so successful and giving back and showing us the path. Okay, the time is now 8:16 a.m. and we will adjourn to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, consultation with board attorney regarding all matters as authorized by law. Texas Government Code 551.074, deliberation regarding appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, dismissal of employees and officers, including the Texas executive team and CEO compensation, Texas Government Code 551.072, deliberate, purchase, exchange, value, or lease of real property, Texas Government Code 551.076, safety and security audits, devices, and personnel. We'll return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session. We are now back in open session, and the time is 8:35 a.m. And is the video recording on? Yes? All right. We don't have any public comment today, so we will move forward to the CEO report, and I will turn it over to Seba.
Great. And we're confirmed that the video's on? Okay. Great. Well, I'm going to take us through an abbreviated progress to goals update.
Recording in progress.
We're just going to spend a few minutes on this today because we want to spend more time specifically on the academic deep dive and reviewing our mid-year academic data. In your board packet, which we did differently this time, Jenna had some really great new ideas around how to do a board packet differently. But we want your feedback to let us know, did this work for you? Did it not work for you? So it probably felt really different than the slide deck you're used to getting. It was a lot more narrative. Please give us your feedback so we can do it again, not do it again, change it. Let us know because this is really for you. In our progress to goals, and Christine, is it possible to get the remote? I promise I won't break it. She said no. She said no. She said, I'm just going to change that slide for you, Seba. I am not giving you that remote.
You really can't read that slide, though, so.
It is on your iPad.
On the
Thank
iPad,
you.
right.
Okay, thanks, Christine. Okay, so it is on your iPad. Hopefully, you can find it on, there's no pictures.
Slide 9.
Thank you. On slide 9.
It is slide 9.
So a few things I just wanted to point out on the progress to goals. You should be used to now seeing this at every board meeting and once between board meetings when we email it out. From the last time we showed you this progress to goals to this time, our data has remained fairly consistent. There are no big swings or shifts in the data. We have added this time our interim assessment, our IA data. We will talk about that in the academic deep dive in just a few minutes. You can see that we haven't color-coded it because it is actually not predictive of where we're going to be at the end of the year. And so we didn't want to color-code it falsely and just
Where's,
be
is that on this
confusing.
chart, the IA?
It's great. It's
Oh, the grade
grade
stuff, okay, the gray
right
bars,
there.
yeah, okay.
Yep, so we added that in. Everything else is fairly consistent. The org, you can see down below on budget, 100% of our budget owners will meet their budget. We're at 84%. That is more of an internal guide for us to look at, to hold our budget owners accountable. The organization on a whole is on track to meet its budget. That is the most important thing for you to know coming out of that. Any questions on this progress to goals before we head over to the academic deep dive?
Yeah, but real quick, why are the interim assessments not predictive?
We will go into that in just a minute, Peter, during the academic deep dive. So if you could hold on to that question, that'd be great. And I can share that.
And I think one question I've asked Seba and Jenna to think about is, what do the color codings mean to me?
Yes.
How am I supposed to use these colors as a board member to understand where we feel urgency or don't feel urgency? And so I think that's a little bit of a TBD discussion between the senior team and the data team about that. And so we'll come back to you all about that because I think, colors have signaled different things to the internal data team than they would to me in a dashboard that I might see in business. And so we'll come back probably, hopefully next meeting and talk
But
about that.
do we have I know we're discussing it, do we have a current definition of red?
Yes. That is in your board packet.
Okay, okay,
Um,
all right.
It's one of the later slides.
Got it.
Yes,
Effectively, we're not meeting the number yet, which,
Right.
yes.
yes,
But doesn't-
we're not.
doesn't
But it doesn't say, will we ever meet the number?
Are we on track to get there or
Exactly.
something?
Correct.
So,
And
which
so-
is what I thought, but which isn't true, is not what the color means right now.
Correct.
So-
So we'll be making that shift, but right now it means we haven't achieved it yet.
Yeah.
So, why is column 2, SY24 and beyond metrics, different from the target that you've established? Is it because it's over time? Okay.
The target's over time. We
Over
don't
time.
think we'll get there yet
Okay.
this year.
The metrics over
But
time.
we want to set those metrics as our North Star.
North Star.
see.
Got it, got it.
Okay, so that's why the color coding really needs to shift because, okay, I get that.
Well, the color coding is, yes, it needs to shift to tell us, are we on track at the end of the year to meet our SY target,
Right.
SY24 target? Right now, it's telling you, have we met it already?
I see.
Yeah, right now, red says we're pretty far off, yellow says we're close, but it doesn't talk about, are we gonna get there?
Right.
I think, yeah. If you guys can see yourself getting there, I would change a red to a yellow. It's just,
Correct. So we're working on that.
if you say we're really off, it stays red.
Correct.
Great, great.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's
keep
go
going.
on to the academic deep dive. So Christine, the remote's not working then?
Sorry, you're a little too far from there, so I tried switching it here.
Okay, so we'll just tell you.
You give it back, it'll work.
That's
Give it back. Intervention one.
Fingerprint lock.
That is her way of getting the remote out of your hand.
Put your elbow out.
This is how my.
Do I need the remote?
What I can and cannot do.
Right.
Give it
Yeah,
back.
Christine, can you just, is it okay? Can you just do it? Working for you?
Now we're going down here.
All right, great. As she pulls up the slides, thank you, everyone. Rona and I are excited to share some of our data and our plans for the second semester to make sure that as many of those boxes on that screen are green as possible at the end of the year. I'm going to actually continue with Rona's analogy about the football game. Oftentimes in a school year, it's kind of like a football game halftime. Imagine, just like in a football game, half of your work is done. We've taught half the things, half the standards that children are expected to master. We've given many assessments throughout the year, culminating in our mid-year assessments, our first interim assessment, and our mid-year DIBELS or early literacy assessment. So just like you can imagine when your football team is at halftime, either tied, a little bit ahead, or a little bit behind, each coach is giving an important halftime speech to set direction for the second half. That is happening at all of our schools. That has happened in the first couple days of the second semester, where principals and leaders are setting direction for their team about what was working and what was not working, what they need to accomplish to improve. Just like a football coach is setting direction for their team, school leaders are doing the same at the school level. Similarly, our principal managers and our regional superintendents are setting direction for groups of schools, high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. Similarly, Rona and I are setting direction for the entire state and the system. Where are we winning in which courses? Where do we need support in different courses? What grade levels are we excelling in? And what grade levels do we need to improve? Which cohorts of students are succeeding? And which cohorts of students do we need to direct more resources to? So that's a lot of what this, since we've last met, that's a lot of the work that's been happening at schools. So to kind of help with, Jean, with your question, what do these green and reds mean? The easiest thing to think is, what does it mean for those stakeholders? What does it mean for the principals? What does it mean for the teachers? And most importantly, what does it mean for the learning that the students will engage in the second semester? I'm going to share a lot of the data and our inclinations about and making meaning of it, and then Rona is going to share most of that strategy, that second half strategy that our teammates on the ground are going to execute to make sure that KIPPsters continue to learn. So that's sort of the framing for it, and we'll get into it, Gene, about why not predictive, why not, hopefully. But if you hold on to, it is incredibly meaningful data for our leaders and our teachers. That is probably the most important thing to take away from our mid-year checkpoint on our data. You can go ahead to slide 15, Chris. More ahead of that. Yeah, we'll just leave it there for a moment. So this is just sort of the topics we're going to engage in. The first is actually a little different than the halftime conversation. It's real data. So we're going to tell you about our high school performance on the Real Star EOC test that was given at the end of this first semester.
EOC.
End of course exam. Another word, the high school version of a STAR test.
Got it.
They need it to graduate. That's why it's called end of course. Then we're going to talk about the interim assessment data that I just spoke about. That is a STAR-like assessment. We're going to follow up on our DIBELS, or our early literacy performance, and what that means for the second semester. Rona is going to then take that data and talk about our strategy for success, and then she's going to highlight a little bit about our academic work group. So how about we dive in? The headlines that for all of these points are listed here. We're going to, on the next slide, we'll dive into the high school data. Again, the real actual STAR test. It's a success. It is something to celebrate. Our retesters improved on their STAR performance year over year and to a significant extent. So we'll dive into that in just a moment. Secondly, the next piece of data there is you see that 45% of our KIPPsters in grades K through 2 are at or above grade level for reading. In the new initiative that we've put forward on early literacy. There's some encouraging news there and a lot of work to do there. So we'll dive into that in just a few moments. And then the third bullet point is the summary of our IA, or interim assessment performance, that mid-year, just before halftime test that we took. Essentially, what you need to know, what is true, is that our reading performance, our reading and writing performance, is exceeding our math performance. However, our math performance is a little closer to end-of-year target, though not entirely predictive. I get that that's a little confusing. The math is a little bit closer to achieving its targets, to being green. We've noticed some overperformance or above expected performance in third grade math. Which is very encouraging because it's been an area of focus. For those of you, you may remember, third grade is the first year that children throughout the state take their first exam. And so there's a lot of focus on preparing them in reading and math for that exam. So we've seen some benefit to that focus on third grade. Science has been some strong performance. In 5th and 8th grade and biology, we're exceeding our targets on both masters and in meets. Conversely, the last bullet point, of course, Rona and I are, looking at all of the data as where do we need renewed focus. These courses were not areas of focus in the first semester that the data is telling us. We need to double down our efforts, make that halftime speech. And Rona's going to articulate some of those plans around the courses you see there: 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 3rd grade reading, and English 1, which is our most 9th graders take English 1, which is one of those end of course exams, Gene. So let's actually dive in.
Dan, real
Go
quick,
ahead.
Bullet number 2 on that last slide. So the K2 were on DIBELS, they were 15% away from our
Mid-year.
our mid-year goal.
Correct.
Middle of year goal.
Yep.
Of 60%. So just a little short, but a 7% increase over 6 months ago, basically.
You got it. 4 months. Yeah, in September
4 months,
when we took it. Yeah, we'll get into that more, but I think it's a good question, and Rona, jump in here wherever you feel necessary. We're at 45% now. We set a mid-year goal of 60%, which we're short of. We set an end-of-year target or goal of 80%.
Okay.
There's places where we're outperforming those numbers, and there's places where we're underperforming those numbers.
Can I
yeah.
clarify one thing, Gene? That 7% increase, so when we do dibbles, we do BOI, beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. That 7% is a 7% increase of where we were middle of year last year.
Okay. So a year over year measure.
Yeah.
Are you,
And
is that a satisfactory, do you like that score? I'm just curious.
this is our first year of full implementation that started from the beginning of the year. So what I would say is, going back to that football field, we're over the halfway mark to our goal, which ideally, like, that's where you want to be. And Dan will talk about this, when we start to look at, click down into the grade levels, we have one particular grade level where we know it's sort of holding us back from getting where we want to be.
Okay.
A quick question, as we look at the math, 6th and 7th grade, do we start algebra in 8th, or is that a 9th grade? So 7th grade is really your pre-algebra build-up, getting them ready for, okay.
Let me ask a question, because I still struggle to understand how we select what we choose to discuss. Are these the most important elements of academic performance where we had good performance? Or are these the elements where we've had the most progress, regardless of their relevance? And I get lost. And let me pause here first to see whether I asked a clear question. And second, I would have an ask on consistency, just like what we had with finance, where we have something that's easy to understand whether, but is it iceberg or is this a whiskey rock, right? Where are we here? So let me ask the first question. Are these the most important metrics where we've had some success? Or are these the biggest successes regardless of the metrics? Some of them seem pretty picked from a variety of things that we would have liked to discuss at the headline.
So let me respond to that. So Pepe, these are the most important metrics that we measure.
Okay.
Period, regardless of performance. If you look back at our goals,
Yep.
you will see that our STAR tests are a goal.
Yes.
You'll see that our DIBELS data, our early literacy reading, K2 reading, is a goal. And then again, we jump to STAR performance, which is a goal. So we are only bringing you data that has to do with what we think are the most important goals for our organization as listed on the 12 goals. So we're not picking and choosing data to show you, and we've actually brought this data to you every time.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll continue to bring it to you every time over the course of the year, because we are only bringing you data that is related to our 12 organizational goals.
Okay.
So you'll expect that consistency from us in the progress to goals reports and in these academic reports.
So it's really a matter of consistency, like the KTX goals on a couple of pages before. I like it, it's sort of same every time. This is just the headlines will change month on month depending on what's important.
Correct. Well, the headlines will change depending on the data.
On the data, right.
But the goals will remain the same, and what we report will be against those goals. And so the reason we're bringing you December STAR test data is because that's an actual result. That data has come in, it is real data, it is on a real STAR test, it is not a practice test. So what happens is our kids in high school who don't pass the STAR test in the spring, in order to graduate, they have to pass that STAR test eventually, or they have to graduate by waiver. And so they retest in December. It happens every single year. They retest in December. We just got that December data back, and so we're sharing with you that actual data. The mid-year DIBELS data, that reading data, we measure 3 times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. Our goal is against the end of the year target. So we're telling you where we are against that. And the interim assessment data is what we use to measure how we're performing on what will be the end of year STAR test. So it's our
Some of these are leading indicators to that.
Correct.
And I think that's where I get
Correct.
confused on the relationship of how these metrics drive the
Yes.
actual goals. I think that's where I get
That's
lost.
right. And so the IA data, it's not predictive of the STAR. Now, this is where things get really confusing in education. Going back to that football analogy, which I don't even know anything about football, so we'll see how this goes.
Football, you mean football?
That's right. I'd be better at that.
Intermission
Gymnastics.
at the
I
play.
can do soccer.
It's like going from the horse to the mat.
I brought it up.
football.
I do know you have to run across the field.
I know that.
Anything more than that, but I do know you need to get touchdowns, and we need our kids to get touchdowns.
We need our kids to get a touchdown. So it's not
Go ahead and dive
predictive.
into why this is.
It's
Why
not
is it
predictive because if you think about a football game, okay, going back to this, you can score really well in the first half of the game.
Yes.
And a team can then either continue to score well
Yeah.
or score poorly in the second half of the game. That is the same thing
Great
here.
halftime
Okay?
speech.
Thank you. So, what that means.
You're a closet Monday Night Football one.
Thank you. It's because of Travis Kelce. All right. So, so what that means is, in a real example, in third grade, that's my knowledge of the curriculum here,
I
Rona.
got you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Let's do it.
In third grade, if they learn fractions in the first half of the year and they do really well on them, we're like, yes, they're doing well. They met their target on fractions. They met their targets on addition and subtraction. They met their targets on multiplication, division. Those were all taught in the first half of the year. Then we get to the second half of the year and we get to decimals. And now we're like, how are they going to do on decimals? It's good that they did well on fractions, but we don't know if they're going to have the same performance on decimals and exponents and everything that comes after. And so it's hard to say that the first half of the year is predictive, especially in math, of the second half of the year because the content is different. We know that the habits carry over, that the study skills carry over, that the critical thinking required carries over from the first half to the second half. All of that is good, right? It tells us, okay, they're on the right track. But we don't know how they're going to do on the concepts that are different concepts. It is different in reading. In reading, you get taught a standard about how to find the gist of a story in September. You practice that standard in October. You practice it in November with a new piece of reading. You practice it again in, every single month with whatever novel you're reading. So that reading standard spirals over time is what we call it. So you expect student performance to start out lower and to grow over the course of the year in reading. So we have to look at the reading test and the math test a little bit differently because of the way those two subjects are taught. Science is a bit of both. Okay, there's different concepts that are taught in science over the course of the year, but similarly, there's some skills and learning about science that carries over. So that's why we say this test isn't predictive, because you can't assume that because a kid gets fractions, they're going to get decimals. We can't assume that. That's a bad assumption for our teachers. But what we do know is here are the standards that the kids got. Here's what they met, here's what they mastered, here's what they didn't get, and we have to reteach in the second half of the year. So our teachers dive into this data student by student, standard by standard, and literally do an autopsy of this data to figure out their plan for the second half of the year. So in our classrooms, this data is incredibly important. It is the best data we have, this interim assessment data. But for you all as a board, it's a little bit harder to make predictions from it. What we can tell you is in math, We're on track right now. That's a good thing, because last year we weren't. In reading, we're not where we want to be yet. We're not on track. So we have to grow the kids as they see these standards again and again and again in their reading over time. And there's work to do there to reteach some of them and to continue to deepen them.
When you say on track, based on STAR?
Yes. Based on STAR to meet the STAR goals that we've set.
That's the first bullet point.
Yes.
Thank you. That has been very helpful for me to understand the story.
Is it safe to say that in the end, the first bullet is the most important assessment, how well we perform on STAR?
It's the real assessment.
Right.
But this is only for EOC, end of course is for high school. Grades 3 through 8 come in April. That's when we're tested. Right, so what we know is the real data for the high school kids who had to retest because they failed last year. That's what that first bullet point tells you.
Christine, go ahead and go to the next slide so they can see that.
And another way to say, that is the first data point that will feed into this year's accountability. Another way to
24
say it.
accountability.
That is the first data point that will actually be a part of our current year's accountability.
And guess what? It's good news.
But the nuance here, I think, Seba, is, tell me if this is right, that the math goals are lower than the English goals.
Correct. That is right.
So we're on track to hit the lower goal of math.
That's right.
But we're not on track to hit the higher goal of English.
That is right. That is accurate.
The goal
Was
was
the growth
lower?
the same, though?
Is because our previous year performance was lower.
So, I mean, but those goals were set based on previous year performance, so we're looking for an aggregate growth in both subjects. It's just our math was at a lower rate last year.
Understood. I mean, they're both showing improvement, the absolute number, right?
Correct. That's right. So let's talk about the actual STAR data from these retesters that just got their scores back.
So as you can see in the summary, we, in every exam administered, student performance increased from everywhere from 18 to 1%. That is significant. Let me tell you a little bit about the nature of these retests. In our history, it has been, it's a challenge to do this retest because it's students who either took an exam before and failed it or are new to our system and for some reason or another never took it. Some of the students retake the course. If they failed the course and didn't get credit, they retake it and they can take a mid-year test. Some do not retake the course because they've already passed it and gotten credit for it. And so the challenge historically is, how do you find time in the schedule to reteach a course that they've already taken? And it takes a lot of planning, a lot of investment from teachers. Like, I have my regular course to teach, and I have to make sure that the students who have failed previously have the opportunity to retest. And over years and years of emphasizing the importance of it, the importance for the child, it's a graduation requirement. It demonstrates mastery of these essential building blocks of a high school education. Has been really illuminating. I think you'll also see just the performance with the special education, which is the students with individualized education plans, have all increased. So a particular focus on our special education students has been encouraging to see and affirming of our strategies. And lastly, our emergent bilingual students who are still learning English. You can see the growth in algebra and biology was phenomenal, and a slight dip in English too. So to Seba's point, this is real accountability, this is real data, first indications of 2024, and an affirmation of our strategy that all of our students matter, and all of our students are given the opportunity to lead on STAR EOC.
And just to help you place that, like a double-digit increase on the STAR test is a really big deal. It is really outside of the norm to get a double-digit increase in any subject on the STAR test. So these are results we're really proud of. And we're not taking our eye off the ball because we still have a lot of work to do for this year.
Have the students fall into this That failed last year, what percent?
Anytime you look at our data, it's the number of students who did not achieve approaches or higher. So if we had 70%, take our English, I'm not remembering the 2023, it's in here somewhere. Let's say 70% of our students achieved approaches or higher, then 30% would need to retest.
Okay, and it's
They get
roughly in there
opportunities
somewhere.
In summer, they get opportunities in December. They can take multiple opportunities until they graduate.
I'm wondering why the English increase is so much lower than the others. Are the tests all given in English? They are?
English 1 and English 2 have been some of the most difficult courses for us to really show improvement on. I mean, you will see, I think we just shared with you a couple slides ago, we'll share with you again, on the interim assessment data, the data for the students who are going to take this same test at the end of the year. Again, English 1 is one of those courses where we're like, we got to double down because we're not seeing the gains we need to. And that has been a historic issue for us in 9th grade.
Another question I have, it seems to me when I look at, I think it's slide number 10, we're assessing our performance against internal targets or maybe targets against TNA. Do we have we benchmarked against other schools to see how we are performing? Because when I look at the actual performance, it's running lower than our metrics that we set for ourselves. And I'm curious as to how are other schools performing.
Yeah, we encourage everyone to outperform. Most school leaders encourage, set goals that are even higher, right? Our job.
Schools outside of KIPP.
We only track our performance against ourselves.
Or yourself, okay.
By looking at our current or our past year student cohort performance to set ambitious but realistic goals. I think what you'll see on the board scorecard is, I don't see it here, but we have it's right here. The beyond metric is not our aspiration, where we want our students to be. So if you remember, we expect our KIPPsters to be at 90, 75, 40. We're not there yet. So that if we achieve those goals, we will outperform
Every district.
So that's a great question, and that's kind of how we couch it. We set a realistic and ambitious goal based on our current student performance for a given year, knowing that in order to accomplish our mission of ensuring that our KIPPsters are college ready and are successful after high school, in college and beyond.
So it's an indirect.
They need to get to these more ambitious metrics.
District level STAR scores, right? So what percent are passing on the original, right? That's all publicly available. So
Okay.
you could go look at any district and see.
You can see the,
Right.
okay.
Question. What, to adopt the football analogy here, what in-game adjustments are we making?
Yeah.
Back to like English 1 and 2 to improve our performance. Simple said, but you said we're doubling down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe can we talk about exactly what we're doing so different now versus last year to actually double down, just so we can kind of understand it.
We forward a few slides.
If I'm getting ahead of
the
us,
response.
we can wait, but I just thought it was a good time to ask that question.
Why don't we do this? Let's go through the mid-year performance,
Okay.
Cleve.
Okay.
And then we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about academic strategy.
Okay, perfect.
And
No
what
worries.
are those end game shifts?
In-game adjustments.
That's right.
Halftime.
Yeah, halftime.
Halftime pivot.
Halftime adjustments.
Next meeting, we're going to use rugby analogy.
Christine, you can go to the next slide.
If we keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the next two slides with football analogies are essentially summaries of what Seba has already told you. I'll just underscore the two sentences. The underlined bullet number 2. The interim assessment data should be used strategically to respond to the learning needs of KIPPsters. That's the halftime speech. That's everything that Seba just said. to your point, where we want to, teachers need to know, most importantly, which students were successful on the test and which standards did they learn, which did they not. That's going to feed into Rona's strategy that you're about to hear about. Continue to teach the curriculum and reteach the standards that they did not master. That's essentially what it is. And so that, again, the halftime speech is for the principal, is for the head coach to tell the teachers what we need to do. You know, you have your students. You know your individual student strengths and weaknesses, and you have to make sure that you maximize those and make sure that we close the learning gaps for each individual child. That's the only way to get results, is to focus on every child as an individual. On the next slide, you'll see essentially everything that Seba was saying about the predictability. So that's why we highlighted number 2, transparency and use. It is vital. That's why we give this interim assessment. That's why every organization gives a mid-year assessment to see where we are as a touch point on our performance. But it's only as good as the second half, I think, is what I'm taking away from Seba's framing. If we continue the successful plays in the second half, keep teaching, continue with the mastery, but to Seba's point, we still got to teach decimals, and they don't know anything about decimals, so we have to execute those just as well. By the way, if they didn't, some students didn't master fractions, we got to reteach those fractions. So that's the challenge of, that's the excitement and the challenge of the second semester. You'll see number 6, where this is going. At the end of next month, getting towards the end of February, we're going to give a second interim assessment called IA2. That will be different. That will be all the standards, and that will be an actual practice STAR test. So the plan right now that Rona is going to highlight is what you do between IA1 and IA2 is you take this data and you're teaching both the first teach and the reteach to get ready for the full assessment that we give in February.
And that's predictive because it's an actual release STAR test with the full set of standards. So when we come back to you at the next, not the special board meeting, but the next board meeting in April, we'll be able to say, here's how our kids did on the more predictive test.
But will they have been taught every standard by that point, or no?
No.
That's a great question. That's why it's predictive but not perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the nitty gritty of that is for interim assessment 2, it's at the end of February. When we take the second interim assessment, we will still have about 35 instructional days left before STAR. We will still have between 20 and 30% of new standards to go. So not quite there.
Thanks.
Not quite there yet, but close, really close.
Okay, if you want to go to the yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and real quick, we only give 2 interim assessments because that's all that's allowed by the state.
Yep.
You're not allowed to give more than 2.
Yep. Careful, you're on video. So that's just a more zoomed in slide that shows our performance. It's a little more literally zoomed in of the slides that Seba showed. So you can see where it says IA1 December, that is our current performance. So in reading 62.31.7, in math 55.27.10. It shows that distance is the distance to the end of year target. So that shows us what we have to, the increases we need to have in order to turn all those targets green. Again, not entirely predictive, not exactly perfect, but it gives us a sense of our performance. We've also shown you some historical comparisons. You may ask, how does this compare to other mid-year checkpoints? So we actually went back 2 years because that exam 2 years ago was most similar to the way we administered the assessment this year. So you can see in reading, if you compare IA1 in December to IA1 in 2 years ago, you can see we're outperforming, mostly outperforming in reading, and we're we're on par in math to where we were 2 years ago. And then lastly, the final row is our actual STAR performance last year. And you can see there's some similarities between our current data and our our real end of year performance on STAR last year. Again, there's information you can glean from that. It's not perfectly predictive, but these are all these data points are available at the school level for the school leader to make those individual adjustments, to set the urgency for individual teachers and individual students. And then it's up to me and Rona to see what courses are causing the low performance, that we have to add more resources and focus as an organization to make sure that we achieve this. So that second half, those decimals are taught well. We're going to go into Dibbles data, and then I know you all want to hear from Rona the plan. So is it okay if we just dive into Dibbles for a few moments? You heard that in the headline slide. This is just so again, Dibbles is our assessment that we give around early literacy for students in kindergarten through second grade. Again, knowing that third grade, reading on grade level by third grade is a huge indicator about a student's ability to be college ready. So that's one of our big goals, is to, by the end of this year, have 80% of these students to be on or above grade level. So here again, you see it, the blue and the green. In the beginning of the year, we were at 38% at or above grade level. We are now at 45%. So that's a 7% growth. And I think Rona actually said, coincidentally, it's also an improvement over mid-year last year, which is not shown in this slide. My interpretation of this, our interpretation of this is we are thrilled with the growth and also challenged with the opportunity ahead of us. We're going to be progress monitoring the interventions that happen with our K through 2 students to make sure that we get dramatic growth in the second semester, because we know it is vital to ensure that our KIPPsters are reading on grade level by the time they finish second grade. It's different in each of the grade levels. Kinder, first, and second. If you're a kindergartner, you're at the beginning of the program, you're going to get more accelerated growth. If you're a second grader, you're getting the focus of our institutional focus on K through 2 a little later in your KIPP career. These slides show the KIPP effect. So what you see here, from the top to the bottom, the top is the students who are new to KIPP. The bottom are the students who've been at KIPP for 3 or more years. What you can see is that the students, you see the blue bars getting longer. The longer you're here, the longer you're a KIPPster, the stronger your reading levels. So again, everything that we've talked about, student retention, the time that it takes in order to see the fidelity of our intervention programs work. It's showing the KIPP effect is in effect in early literacy. And then the last slide on Dibbles, we did a correlation between STAR performance, the interim assessment STAR performance, and these Dibbles ratings. And what you see on that slide, it's a pretty strong correlation between that interim assessment. Take a look all the way on the right. The students who scored above benchmark, above grade level, 91% of those students were approaches, 61%
On the STAR.
were on the STAR interim assessment, and 16% were masters. And you can see those numbers drop, especially if they're below benchmark. So there seems to be a strong correlation, and it's a good tie, even though K through 2 students do not take STAR. It is showing a strong correlation between their predicted performance on their STAR test.
So what that means is we have to really focus on kindergarten through second grade literacy because it sets them up for success on the STAR. And we know that reading by third grade is absolutely crucial for our kids, right? And we see that in the data. So that's why you'll continue to hear us, Pepe, to your question earlier, like what are the data points you're talking about and why? We're talking about this early literacy data. It's one of our 12 organizational goals because it is such a predictor for how kids do in future years. That's what this slide shows us.
How long have we been implementing Dibbles?
This is the first full year. Last year we started and we kind of got it off the ground October, November. This is the first full year.
Assessments total during.
And those are one-on-one.
An acronym every year.
Every year.
So the these three last slides, if I was to replay them, is we have about, on the green, red, we have about 45% of our kids that are at or above.
Yes.
On the previous, sorry.
Yes.
Then that, in the next page, I see twice as many kids. What am I reading wrong?
The
Now I
slide
have
with-
49 and 38 within at or above.
Go back one. This one? Yeah.
So the previous one, it's 40, right? 40% of the, one more, go back one more?
One more.
So it's 28, 25, and you can't see it here, but it's.
45. Right?
Peter, get out of the way. 25 and 20. And then the next one, so that's 45, and then on the next one, we have sort of about 45 in the blue. Does the blue include the gray, maybe?
Yeah.
Is that it?
No, let's, can we, who has the clicker? I don't even
It's
know.
Christine.
Christine is
you get
clicking for you.
Okay.
She's our clicker.
So this slide, what we did was we looked at the data by how many years when we think about kindergarten, first and second.
I understand, and you see that improvement, right? However, the absolute amount of kids that are here are 54 and 38 on the last one, right? So almost 100%.
Yeah.
So, and that are in, by the legend, at or above. So now we have a lot more kids.
No.
Oh,
The
I'm
54,
misunderstanding.
yeah, the 54% represent students that have been with us the last 3 years. They are performing at 54%. So 54% of them are actually at and above grade level. Where, as compared to KIPPsters that have not been with us in the gray.
So this is a subset.
Yes, it's a subset. That's why that N size is there on the left.
That's right.
Yeah, to show that within the larger set of data, one of the things we're looking at, which we have to, is for KIPPsters that are coming to us that are not a full part of our full academic program for early literacy, how are they performing against KIPPsters who essentially start with us in kindergarten?
So we can do very little about this. It says that sticking here helps, but.
Yes, it says that staying here helps, but it also, it does tell us a lot about from, Elevation, I talked about this a lot, like from recruitment efforts and things like that, like how is it actually impacting our academic performance?
Thank you.
So this number, these ends here, 3,300, 2,100, 9, that is the entire, that's the entire class composite, right?
No, those are the students. The N is the number of kids who are new. The N for one is the 2,100 students who have been here for 1 year.
So there are
But that could be a second grader who just moved here.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Or it could be a
kindergartner.
kindergartner.
Exactly.
Doesn't
in
tell
their
you what
first
grade.
year. Right.
Yeah.
So, but in the current, we're 600, there are 600 more students that are not represented in this data
And who are they?
that are new, that did not come to us, that came to us after kinder.
So that wouldn't be a zero, like on this chart, like 0 years is
We
a
would
new
do,
kid?
yeah.
First year KIPP,
Yeah.
is what that means.
Thank you. So that's why I'm following. I'm sorry to ask so basic questions, but it helped me interpret the data. Thank you.
Hold on, but
So let's turn to the academic strategy. So what are we doing now to get to the end of the game?
One last question. What is giving you the most concern at this point in your, what's the nagging performance area? What's bugging you right now the most?
Yeah.
Because but let me just preface that by saying, I'm impressed with the data that you're presenting. The answers aren't quite there yet, what we want, but I'm also very impressed that it feels like you know exactly what you want to go do.
We do.
Right, I feel like you really have a game plan here. And I think when we met in September, we kind of had an idea, but that idea now is turned into action and game plan, and you're measuring it, which is all the right things, right? That's the way to get into a better position. But now I'd like to ask, in any strategy, any plan that we implement, right, you've got stuff that you're going, okay, this is starting to look like what I want, and then there's this, it's like,
Yeah.
what's the,
Yeah, so that one, I always start with a positive. So what is looking like what we want it to look like is primary school achievement.
Good.
That is important because most of our schools that we are deeply concerned about are primary schools. And so that is great. Where I am most concerned is our middle school math. And so in English 1, and you'll hear me talk about that in a minute, but that is where I'm most concerned, mostly because when I look at where those KIPPsters as a cohort, right? So a lot of the data we share is like isolated to just the grade level. A lot of what I do is I look at, well, Alex is in 8th grade now, but where was Alex in 5th grade? And then 6th grade, and then 7th grade. And I am most concerned about 6th and 7th grade because when I look at where they were as 4th graders and 5th graders, they took such a dip last year. The hill now to climb is massive to get them where they need to be before they transition to our high school. So that is where I am most concerned.
Okay, thank you.
And is that related, though, to curriculum and teaching, or is that related to COVID losses and a big hill to recover because of that?
It is a big hill to climb because coming out of COVID, those 3 groups, cohorts of KIPPsters, our current 6th graders, our current 7th graders, and our current 8th graders, coming out of COVID, their performance, quite frankly, was about in the 20s. And so we are trying to get those cohorts of KIPPsters to 75, 80% from the 20s. And that, when I say it's a mountain, it is a mountain to climb. And we see that in our achievement data.
It's almost like
third and
those
fourth graders when
kids
COVID
started
hit.
taking over character.
And it's a national trend, it's not just us.
Non-KIPPster, like new to KIPP kids.
Correct. Almost even lower.
Wow.
But Jean, does that get at your, that is the thing, I always
Yes.
say that is keeping me up at night, is I am watching our future high school KIPPsters who will have to take the ACT and SAT, and I'm looking at how their current performance aligns to what will be true for them on the ACT if we don't change their trajectory.
Right. So using a baseball analogy.
Uh-oh.
Don't throw a
My husband is
curveball.
a former baseball player.
The minor
I'm trying
league-
to get this
Okay,
right,
let's
so
do
come
it.
on.
You're new to baseball, the minor leaguers. You feel really good about how those teams are training their kids and all that and getting there. But you're almost kids going to high school.
Yeah.
So the farm system back here is looking great, and 6, 7, 8 years from now, if all this continues,
Correct.
we're in
We're in
great
great
shape. But you've got these kids now in the AAA system they're not there, and they've got to become major leaguers quick.
Correct.
Our farm system is
pipeline.
weak, and it's hurting the major league club, and so we got to get the farm system
So
right.
now my hockey analogy would be.
Well, yeah, let's not.
No, but I think that's well articulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, I'm the data guy because I don't understand anything about education, but I understand some of the data things. And I would commend you for the push. I would urge you to keep going, I would just say. I think we're still not there. And I think many of these issues, if we could get Mr. Son to sort of spend some time here and maybe Rona spend some time in finance, maybe, the best things will come out of the team. But, issues, such small issues like data tidiness would really help, at least for those of us who only see you for 3 months, help. The slide that we didn't discuss anymore, not to go back, but again, the percentages don't add up to 100. It's just not well indicated that some groups included others. It's very difficult for to interpret the data without your verbal commentary. That makes it harder for us to make progress before.
But we have made significant steps forward.
That's my point. My point is we've run, I urge you to keep going.
Right.
I think Larry, who leads our data team with Tiana, are working on getting better and better. And so keep giving us this feedback because it helps us get better on how to present this data in a way that's digestible for you. I think it will be helpful next year when we can show you the same set of data against the year before, which we can't do cleanly right now. Because last year, the performance measures were different. because it was a new test and because we were trying to pilot the state system, which didn't give us good data. So we're using a different system this year. So next year we'll have better year-over-year data and it will feel cleaner. And then to your point around, what we put on a graph, how it looks, we're going to continue to work on that, Pepe, and we'll continue to ask for your feedback.
Just a closing commentary, sorry to take so much of your time, but the fact that Pepe does not understand the graphs takes nothing away from the fact that the academic team knows where to work and that they're capturing the data. It's really in our ability to help, but that was just.
And might I add, Seba, and thanks to Jean. Jean is helping to lead our technology and data work group, Pepe. And within that, one of our work streams specifically, we talked about just last week, is a work stream around how do we make sure we're presenting the right data in the right way so that the board can engage with it the fullest. So in addition to just doing good work and our core work every day at KIPP Texas, that work group will help ensure that the data we present to the board in the future is you guys are able to engage and understand more clearly. And so look forward to not only input from you, but others in that work group,
Well, to that point, I thought that nobody responded to your question about the package. Reread, I thought it was.
That was great.
Great.
Agreed.
Way improved.
Good job, Jenna.
Good job, Jenna.
No, it was not overwhelming. My eyes didn't cross. I actually got through it in Seba's hour, maybe a little bit less. And it was much, much better. So thank you, Jenna. It was really great.
And maybe we can work, Pepe, on some of the headers, right? The labels of what are you seeing here?
The headlines.
Well, I also think you guys should spend 30 seconds on your slide saying, let me orient you to this slide. Because you jump right into the data and start drawing conclusions. And we're trying to say, what does that yellow bar mean? What does that green bar mean? So
That's helpful.
So just
The blue and the green.
some orientation for us would be good as well. But
Why do we have big picture view?
so the new bar on data, does Pepe get it? Is that our?
Say again?
The new bar on data, does Pepe get it?
New standard.
Does Pepe get it?
Does Pepe get it?
No, but that's a high bar to jump over. That is a hard bar to jump over. I think it's so, this is the core of what we're doing this couple of years, right? So it's just laying the foundation is fundamental. Thank you, Sarah.
All right, let's talk the second half of the game.
Yeah.
Or the fifth inning.
No, can you go back? Oh, good enough. Thanks. All right, so the second half of the game. One of the things that I want to start by saying is, I used the word pivot earlier and I almost kicked myself. Because it's actually really important that we, in the second half, don't completely take the playbook and tear it up. The playbook that we've created is research-based, is what the best organizations across the country do, right? And it's really centered in, it's not like Rona's brain, right? And this thing that I came up with, but it's grounded in research and just what good, high-performing schools and organizations do. And so we're not going to tear that up, because we would actually be tearing up every bit of research that says you should focus on curriculum, you should focus on making sure your teachers understand what they're teaching, and you should focus on making sure that you're using your data to drive decisions. So we're not going to tear that up. But what the second half is an opportunity to do is for us to click deeper. So I'm not going to use football because I'm going to mess it up. So just work with me. I might put a little bit in there. Alex is going to help me. But it is an opportunity to sort of say, okay, great. We have this sort of mid-game data. And now what does it tell us? And how do we click deeper and sort of get a little more narrow in our focus? And so that's what our second half strategy is really about. So there's 3 components. One is the strategic plan. The second is additional tools and resources. And the third is still going back to building our teachers' content knowledge. So I'm going to actually just stay on this slide because I think it's simple. The first one, in terms of the strategic plan, I'm going to make a connection here. Let's go back to when we talked about the accountability system earlier. And that we now have clarity around how to sort of make progress within this system. And so what that means is, from a strategic planning standpoint, our schools have to understand where every student is in terms of accountability. So are they almost at approaches?
Are they already at approaches? Are they at meets? Are they at masters? So how are they performing within the accountability bands? And then based on that performance, for our little KIPPsters that are like not where they need to be, what are the skills and standards that they need to get there? And then what's our plan to get them there? And so what you will see if you were to peek inside the doors of our schools right now is just that. You see our first teach, right? Because we still have about 50% of the standards that still need to be taught. So we call that a first teach. So the first time we're teaching standards, that is still happening. And now there's a layer added that is in response to our mid-year data, where I've actually said, or a school leader has said, a teacher has said, great, these 10 students also need to go back on these 3 skills. And so now we're going to keep going, because we have to, right, on the standards we haven't taught, and we need to actually go back to the 3 standards that they never got. So that is essentially the strategic plan that has been crafted by all of our schools. It gets to the student level, it gets to the standard level of what needs to be retaught from the first part of the game. So any questions about that? Okay, so they're running 2 paths, the new stuff, and we didn't get this stuff, now we gotta go back to it. The second part of the plan is actually coming a lot from my team. So historically, and we talk a lot about teacher sustainability and the newness of our teachers, right? Historically, we've asked our teachers to go create those reteach plans on their own. So your KIPPsters, 15% of them did not master these set of skills. Create the plan to reteach them. Internalize your plan, like you make sense of it, practice the plan, and then go teach the plan. So what I've done with my team this year is actually said, we're not going to ask our teachers, most of them are in their first, second, and third year, to create their own reteach plans. We're going to actually look at the data, get a really strong sense of why students didn't get it, and then we will actually create the reteach plan. It's important because what it does is it removes a lot of the variability that we see happening in our schools between a teacher who really gets data and really understands the content and can go create that really strong plan and a teacher who just actually doesn't, right? And so what we see in those cases historically is the teacher who gets it, their kids move forward. And the teacher who like doesn't know how to go create that plan, kids stay stuck.
Are you getting any pushback?
No.
They're grateful. I mean,
They're
and
very grateful.
Rona, Dan, and Justin and I walked our schools in Austin yesterday. We walked 5 schools. And almost every classroom, we saw reteach going on if we hit the beginning of class.
Yep.
So there was a specific lesson that was being retaught using the tools. And those tools may look like the teacher reteaching it himself or herself. It may look like a blended learning program that we're using, or a small group intervention. So depending on how many kids miss the standard and what the standard is, it's retaught in a few different ways. But those plans, the fact that Rona's team is creating the plans and not the teachers is a really big move forward for us. It's a really big step forward.
Yeah. When I've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of our cousins, right, who are outperforming us, this is one of the moves that they've made. And they've made it through the lens of looking at the tenure of their teachers and actually not taking away a teacher's autonomy around how they teach it, right, but taking a lift off of them in terms of how it needs to be sort of like the plan that needs to be created. What we saw in schools yesterday, we still saw, 4 different classrooms, and that teacher still brought their own thing, right, to how they taught the content, or how they delivered it. But they did not have to spend hours trying to create a plan on top of their regular lesson plans.
And if the teacher is struggling to know how to teach X or Y, right, their reteach isn't going to be any good.
Their reteach is not going to be good.
Right.
Yeah.
Rona, that reteach plan, is that something that you're involved in creating, you or a couple other more senior teachers for the new teachers?
So we have a crew of folks.
Okay.
So most of my team, you should also know,
Okay.
most of my team are former high-performing teachers, high-performing APs, and high-performing school leaders. So these are folks that are have been in schools. We also have a second layer, what we call a vetting committee. So the vetting committee are our highest performing teachers, high performing APs. So everything we do, we send it to them. They vet it, they give us feedback, and then we come back, we implement it. We actually respond to them. Thank you for the feedback. Here's how we've implemented it before we put it out. So we don't put anything out that has not gone through the vetting committee, which are people who are still in schools, in classrooms, in our highest performing classrooms, getting their feedback and incorporating it.
How has this been received by the first-year teachers? I mean, are they appreciative of this, or do they feel insecure about it? I mean, as a first-year anything, right, you're trying to figure things out.
Right. That it has been well received because they still have to plan for their first teach.
Okay.
And so if there was not a tool, right, or a resource focused on the reteach, now as a teacher, you've just doubled my planning time. Because now I have to do both.
And maybe I have kids that didn't pass last year that I'm also teaching on top of my first teach and my reteach. I've got to teach the kids that didn't pass, right? Like the burden on teachers is.
It's heavy.
That's very helpful.
So Pepe was asking a question, which I think.
I was ashamed to ask Paul because I used so much of your time, so that's why
No, but I think it's the right one, right? Which is how can we leverage technology, AI, right, to be doing some of this versus teachers, right? So the blended learning that Saba mentioned is one of the ways, right? That is blended learning is code for tech, right? To make sure we all understand that language. And there are tools that are coming along that can do some of that. It's not necessarily Texas state standards aligned. It's going to be, right, those are mostly national level tools that are coming along, right? So it's going to be helping with general reading comprehension or general writing. Absolutely can be helpful and foundational. That doesn't mean we don't also need dedicated resources helping make that connection to the specific state standards. So there's opportunity there, and there's still a need to interpret and customize for Texas has its own set of standards.
And to build on that, thank you, because I should have said more of that.
No,
thank you. So we are doing a very heavy blended learning push. So we have a blended learning platform for our primary schools for reading and math and science. We have blended all the way through high school. And so when a teacher pulls a small group of students to focus on that set of skills that small group needs, what you'll see in the rest of the classroom is that they're on those blended learning tools. And so we are using that, and we've been doing that all year. That's actually not new. Now we get to sort of customize it or personalize it to say, great, now we can actually program this Imagine Right program to say, well, Rona needs these 5 skills, and so instead of sort of just like going down the path, now we can actually say, let's plug in these 5 skills to make sure she gets in on blended learning. The third prong of that is in our sort of most challenging situations where we actually have either a teacher vacancy, we have a maternity leave, we have a teacher that's really just been struggling all year long. We also are starting to partner with some distance learning providers that will actually be providing distance learning for our students as well in those particular classrooms. So we're sort of hand selecting them very carefully with the input of the school leader and the regional superintendent, but where they're coming to me and saying, Rona, like, I'm looking at the data in this classroom, and actually I have a vacancy, or actually the teacher's on maternity leave for the rest of the year, right? So like, how do we move the data when there's no one in the classroom? That's where we're looking at some distance learning partnerships, where we can actually have teachers on the virtual, on the screen, actually engaging in leading the learning in those classrooms.
And just to clarify, we do have people in the classrooms, not that we don't have anyone.
Yes. No.
Just want to make sure we clarify that. We have a substitute
Yeah.
who's a qualified sub,
Yeah.
but the distance learning allows us to have an expert
At the content.
who understands the content,
Yes.
lean in,
Absolutely.
while there's still an adult in the classroom running the
Yes.
class.
And there's not many of those situations, but we do have some, right? And so we have to find pathways to make sure those KIPPers in those classrooms are still getting what they need.
And is that more at a secondary level where you need
Mostly in
that specialized
secondary, yes.
expertise?
Because secondary, it's a much more, the content knowledge is much more precise, specialized.
Rona, I just want to say what you've described that your team is doing with Reteach, to me, is one of those great benefits that we all expected and hoped to get for KIPP Texas.
Agreed.
But that you have this strong team who can actually help across all of the different schools. And so, thank you.
We're excited. It was
Rona,
too different, but good.
Practically, what does it look like when a teacher has to teach the regular class, but also with the reteach. What does that look like practically?
So the beautiful thing is, Dan and I saw around the corner on this when we saw some of our data from last year. And so when we had the opportunity to set expectations around master schedules, the schedules for all of our schools, we built in extra time. And so whereas last year the math block might have been 60 minutes, most of our schools, the math block is actually 90 minutes this year. And there's some fine tuning we still need to do as we move into next year. But our teachers now, most of them actually, particularly in our primary schools, which is another reason why I think the data is moving, because they have the time in the day. So this is not a like Saturday school, after school. Like they actually have the time in their regular schedules to do that first teach and do the reteaching that needs to happen. As we look ahead next year in our secondary schools in particular, and secondary schedules are complicated, but we have some tweaking to do to make sure we can get all of our secondary schools on the same path.
Are you saying, though, then, that the students who are doing well have to sit through the reteach, or the reteach is focused on those who...
They do not. And so that's where the blended learning comes in. And so the blended learning allows us to it's not just a reteach tool, but it also is an acceleration tool. And so if I need acceleration because I'm already at master's, right, then that blended learning platform allows me to get the acceleration so that I can keep going in my learning.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
All right, so last but not least, is this piece around, go back, teacher content knowledge. And so the teacher content knowledge, I'm going to take y'all on a journey a little bit here. This year we started with what we call professional learning communities, which is they're led by my team and an expert on my team. I'm going to use 6th grade math. So someone who's like an expert in 6th grade math that sits on my team. They've taught it. They've probably been an AP who led it, right? And they were just great at it and have gotten results. So this year when we came in, we already saw at the start of the year, we had 2 courses that we weren't getting it done. 4th grade math and algebra 1. 4th grade math, really important because it's the only course, 4th grade period, is the only place where our primary schools get growth points. And so when we don't get 4th grade right in primary schools, it is very harmful to us in terms of accountability. And then Algebra 1, because Algebra 1 is the gateway course to higher level math in high school. So it is a place, as we think about our mission, where we actually must get results. We have to get it right. And so we started these professional learning communities led by content experts where we were bringing our APs together over that particular course or content area to engage in learning. So they spend about 45 minutes a week really going through the content and talking about best practices and here's what I'm doing, here's what you're doing. Oh, I want to take that from what you're doing and apply it. They celebrate their data together. They talk about their challenges together. It really is a community. What we've seen in our interim assessment data that we just took is that though the schools that participate in those 2 learning communities, their data is outpacing those that did not. Point blank. Their data is outpacing those that did not. And so in regional superintendents looking at that, and Dan and I, we came together and said, all right, we started small with this, with just 2 places. We're seeing that it is working. So now let's expand it. And so as we look into the second semester, the second half of the game, this is where we've taken our courses that are keeping me up at night. And we are now creating professional learning communities around those courses as well. What's really important about that is because over the last couple of months, Dan and I actually have been going into every city and we've been meeting with our teachers in these courses. And we've been meeting with the assistant principals and saying, what is it that you need? Tell us what you need the most in terms of resources and in terms of support. And the thing that they have overwhelmingly said they need the most support with is content knowledge. Overwhelmingly. This is straight from our teachers in a room saying, we need you to support us with building our content knowledge and helping us understand how to teach the curriculum. So these professional learning communities are in response to what our teachers are directly telling us that they need and our assistant principals are directly telling us that they need. So they will happen once a week. And essentially, the goal is that they walk out of those spaces and they can walk right into the classroom and feel very prepared to teach. And that sort of level of self-efficacy is really important. particularly when we start talking about retention and wanting our teachers to feel like they're having success. And that's what these communities are creating. And so that third piece is around 6th grade math, 7th grade math. We will continue with Algebra 1. We will continue with 4th grade math because it's working. And we will also add English 1 into that as well. We will continue to progress monitor it. Are we seeing the data move now based on this part of our strategy? And if so, the hope is that we can expand it to all courses going into next year. You should know that this is one of the things that IDEA does, because actually the former, couple of the former leaders, they're my coaches, and so I got that idea from them. It's something they've been doing for years, and so now I'm trying to incorporate it as a part of our practices, particularly because our teachers are telling us that's what they need.
So this is like a weekly gathering?
Yeah, 45 minutes. And they
45
literally say, here's what I'm teaching next week. Let's all look at it together. Let's practice how to teach it. Oop, here's where kids are probably going to get stuck. When kids get stuck here, here's what I've tried. It literally is a community.
Yeah, it's across schools, so.
I was going to say,
you
is
know,
it at the school or is it
Across
virtual
schools.
or like how
It's
does?
virtual across KIPP, Texas. Because one
Okay.
of the other things we heard from our teachers is we want to feel like there's a space where we can come into the community with other teachers across the state. And right now, most of our time is just with teachers in our building, and we feel like disconnected.
Yep.
And we, like, if we know that Alex is doing something great in his classroom, but Alex is in Dallas and I'm in Houston, when do I get to connect with Alex? So this is that place where they get to connect.
So when you say content knowledge, it's not a competency issue. It's more the delivery in the classroom and how it's absorbed by the student?
It is, let's go back to fractions. It is literally, the state of Texas says mastery for students around fractions looks like this. Let's unpack that and make sense of it, and then let's talk about how to get kids there, how to actually execute on it in a lesson.
Well, the teachers were recruited, they know how to teach. They have the competency to do that, huh?
Oh, absolutely. But we
Okay.
all have to continue to build.
Continue,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Standards change. There are always nuances. I think we all, even myself, I spend time every single year going to almost a boot camp where I get to like a refresher on standards and like, okay, what does this actually mean? And what our state does is every assessment that we give every year, they collect data across the state on where kids are getting stuck. So it's an opportunity for us to sort of forecast. We already know that when you get to this part in the lesson, kids are going to get stuck. What have you tried? What have you tried so that we don't keep repeating the same mistakes and getting the same results? And then you asked me, are they mandatory? So they are mandatory for our schools that we are most concerned about, and then our schools that we are not most, they have an opportunity to opt in. We do try to keep sort of a cap so that it doesn't become, 100 people on the call. We want to keep it so that it's intimate, because that's what we found works best. Because it's also a place where they're building relationships with one another. So we don't want it to be like a conference style type of, situation.
All these investments we're making in training are great. Do we get credit in that or for that in the TEA rating somehow? Like the qualitative section, can we say we're going above and beyond? Like,
No.
None of that?
No.
Okay.
Simple
get credit
answer.
when the numbers.
It's strictly about the scores.
It's strictly about the scores, yeah.
Okay.
But what we are saying is, hey, this worked in 4th grade in algebra, and our teachers saw that it worked. They're like, wait a minute, what are y'all doing over there? We've had school leaders that said, sign me up. I want to, so it was not something that went in terms of expanding it. Once our leaders saw the data, they were like, okay, you all were doing this and it worked. We want to do it too.
And remind me, the teacher career pathway is pretty structured around how we identify, right, highly skilled teachers. My recollection, it's been a couple years since I looked at it, is that's more about, I'll call it general teaching strategies, right? And paying attention to who's in the room, including all the students, classroom management, those things, and not as much content-specific knowledge. Do we need to relook at that to ensure that we've got sort of that recognition of you're a master teacher and you're a master teacher at high school math or reading in late elementary school, something along those lines?
Yeah, it certainly looks at performance.
Okay.
So performance is a pretty big part of our teacher career pathway.
Right.
So I think we draw the line that if your performance is excellent, in,
Have the knowledge.
yeah, seventh
Yeah.
grade math, then
Oh,
you
no,
must
that's
have the
what
knowledge.
And are we
Curriculum.
leveraging those expert teachers then as well
Some
as
of
part of
them.
these
Yes.
communities?
So we have, at a few of our highest performing schools, we have a couple of our APs actually careful not to put more on teachers as we think about expanding.
Right.
That's an opportunity for, like what we call a growth opportunity or stretch opportunity for teachers. But in thinking about, this is the second semester, I'm already still doing first teach. Now I'm having to do some reteach,
Right.
like having to plan for a POC on top of that.
And I guess that's another question I'm sort of noodling on, is if we've thought about, right, some teachers are really good at the intervention piece of it, and some teachers are really great at the general classroom. Some are great at both, but not always.
Yeah.
Have we thought about sort of some specialization or trying to lean in more on some of those pieces as well?
Yeah, so this particular number 3, so number 1 and 2 gets at the reteach. Number 3 is actually the first.
The first teach,
So
right?
number 3, what the goal is to ensure that the second half of the game doesn't take a hard turn in the wrong direction.
Right, right. You're not so busy reteaching that you never
Correct.
get to your first teach.
And historically, that has been a place where we've not been great.
Right.
So this is a sort of a stop. This is a like a look around the corner moment. Like, let's not get so focused on the reteach that we forget we still have 50% of new standards to teach.
Right.
And so this creates a space where if you're talking about it, you're collaborating about it, you're planning for it every week, you walk out ready to go teach.
Yeah.
There's not another 3 hours of work to do.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking though, right, is the first classroom teacher always the right person for the reteach and for especially the students who need a second reteach or a third reteach, right? Like who need that deeper intervention. And like, as I look at the strategic overview plan, right, and I don't know, right, maybe there is a place where we need to be thinking about some teachers are just really good in that space and we need to hand off students for that further reteach versus, you know, everyone keeps their same group of students all the way through.
That happens.
That is happening at some of our, we don't dictate that at the state level, but at some of our schools, we do have schools saying, you know, and it might even been within a cohort of teachers. I have 4 kindergarten teachers, and this teacher is clearly outperforming with this particular group of students, right? This cohort of students. And so I'm going to route all of them to that teacher because that teacher they get it, and like that's where these kids need to go. Yeah.
And I think you're doing a good job of articulating, like, there's a regional strategy and a school-by-school strategy that need to be aligned. Every school wrote an IA1 response plan, every single one. And some of them, you know, are more general, some are very specific. This teacher will teach here. This assistant principal is really great. Is going to teach these 10 kids. So there's a zoomed out version and there's a very micro version at each school.
And that's even happening on my team where, I'll give an example, 7th grade, the expert in our organization in 7th grade math actually doesn't sit on my team. It actually is an AP. So she's leading that professional learning community.
So I think Larry's going to jump in, and then we're going to transition to the academic work group.
Yep.
Yeah, real quick for the group, we mentioned TCP. That's our Teacher Career Pathways program for some of the newer board members. The intent of that program is to identify our highest performing teachers. It comes along with some development and compensation incentives. And really to your question, Shanna, our proxy is student achievement. Student achievement is an element of the rubric of scoring. And so the assumption is if I have core pedagogy and I know the content, then it's going to result in student achievement. So we use that as a way to kind of affirm that. As we get down a path on the curricular changes that we expect to have or will have over the next couple of years, we can then go back and look at, okay, do we want to tie more to specific content and curriculum? But now our proxy is student achievement.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And the measurement. Yeah.
Let's talk academic work group. We go forward again, Christine. One more. A few more, actually. Yeah. There we go.
All righty. Jump in here with me.
Sure. So in light of all of these conversations at the last meeting and this one, right, so there's been a discussion around creating this academic work group, and really it is to go deeper in the data, make sure we understand the data as a work group, and help support Rona and Dan and the others here on, are we really aligning and leveraging best practices and targeting our resources, which are always limited, in the most effective ways to really get the best outcomes for our students along the way. And part of that is clearly, what does that look like from an innovation in the classroom? What is the balance of teacher-led versus technology? What are the right tools? What should we be thinking about? How do we think about that? What do we need to be thinking about from a curriculum tools as well, right? So how do we make sure that we have the best resources to really accelerate the direction and where we're going, as well as then on the improvement plans, really going deep and looking at those to make sure that those schools are going to make the improvements that they need to as quickly as possible. So what else, anything else you want to add?
Oh, you did a great job.
And then we are still kind of putting together this work group, so we're leaning on some of you, as well as I think some regional board members with some education and academic background to help us as we kind of work through and think through this experience. It'll be kicking off next month.
Agreeing to.
Very much. Excited.
Well, we've come full circle because we used to have an academic work group and we decided none of the board members could really help, but now we have you.
We have a real educator.
We have an educator.
And I do think on the regional boards, we have
Yeah, we
some
do.
good academic knowledge, which
Yep.
is very helpful, and it is, it's important to have, for our team to have coaches and people to talk to about
Absolutely.
best practices of learning, et cetera, whether
Really
it's the
excited
academic
about
work
this,
or outside.
this work group because I think we're at a pivotal moment where we're starting to build out our multi-year academic plan. It's the first time that we would have now had a multi-year academic plan since COVID. That, fingers crossed we don't have another worldwide breakdown, right? And so it's a really important moment for us to get this right, the plan right for the next 3 to 4 years as we look towards our future as an organization, and being able to have, the academic work group's support and some guidance, particularly as we think about innovation and how do we think outside the box in alignment to like the changing landscape of education, is really important to me to make sure we get this right. So I appreciate your leadership and for everyone that will join.
Well, I think we're ready for a break, and I thank you all for all the preparation for this and board member questions, and I know we heard from many of you that you really wanted to have more information about the academic plan and more chance to ask questions and discuss it, and so let us know if you have any feedback about more of this, questions, et cetera, because I think this is the direction we're going, is trying to spend the majority of our time together on, obviously we have to cover the things that we have to cover from a governance and compliance standpoint, but really being able to dig into what are the most important topics in a substantive way. So let's have our break, and please be back here at 10:15.
So I just want, I think the one thing for those of us who are non-academics who've been in this one, I think, what are the questions that we should be asking? I think if you two could collaborate on that before a board meeting, and basically these are the questions you should be thinking about as board. That would be very helpful for a focused perspective.
I think it might also lend itself to how we frame up the data back to the initiative that Jean and Larry are working on with the IT work group, so.
Right.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. Son, we are ready to have a finance update. Yes, I think
Hope you
so.
still say
I
that
think
at
we're
the-
still recording,
Hope you
yes?
still say that at the end of the presentation.
Yes, we're good. Okay, we're good.
Okay, great. So today's agenda for finance is 2 parts. Fiscal year 24, we'll cover update. Okay. We're going to cover the fiscal year 24 update, both the OPEX and the CAPEX, and then we'll move to fiscal year 25. our strategic financial plan for fiscal year 25. So this slide you see every time. This is no change from the November board report card, but essentially we plan to meet our covenant. We have in the past, we will in the future. Fiscal year 24 is the light blue color, all the way to the left, the first column right after the target. No changes since we last met. Still plan to meet all of our financial targets and board guardrails. So this slide is just a reminder of what our fiscal year 24 target EBITDA is. It is 44 million. It will stay at 44 million for the foreseeable future because we're not issuing any debt. But one thing that Allison asked for during the FWG update was the latest median report from S&P. So we pulled the median debt service coverage ratio for anyone that's BBB+, which is basically 9 charter schools in the BBB+ rating. And that's page 7 of the S&P median report. But we just wanted to show you all again that we are striving for a target of 1.2 times. And then what the median debt service coverage ratio for a BBB+ rated school is 1.7, the difference of $18 million. So we resource our organization with an additional $18 million annually because we target a lower debt service coverage ratio. Hey, Christine, can you just click back on the other one? Thank you. No worries. So now we're moving into the fiscal year 24 ADA projection. So we always bifurcate ADA to make it easier for the board to understand. This is no different from the November 2023 slide, which is the same layout. The numbers are slightly different. So enrollment is negative 765. So on the left-hand side in the gray, you see our fiscal year 24 budget. In the middle of the bars, you see the actual for December. And then the light blue bar, you see the forecast for fiscal year end 24. The forecast takes into account any attrition, any trends that we have seen in the past, so it is a true forecast. Our enrollment is negative 675. Our attendance is doing better than budget by 66 basis points. So then you see our average daily attendance at negative 502. This is actually an improvement of roughly 110 ADA since the last one, which you'll see reflected on the bridge as well. So our ADA has gotten better since November 2023. The caveat here is that it's still only halfway through the year, so there's still a lot of volatility that can occur. But this is our latest best forecast.
So you're forecasting to be, you're at 110 better
than November.
And does the forecast say you're going to hold that 110 better? Is that what that?
Correct. I mean, as of today, the data says that we're going to hold this number. Say we have negative 502. So it still is a miss to budget, which you'll see reflected on the next slide. So the next slide is the same slide as November, it's the same template. The numbers changed a little bit here. The numbers have gotten better. The orange bars all the way to the left are the unexpected revenue decreases or additional expenses, totaling $33.6 million. The only change from November is the ADA. The ADA was a negative 600 roughly, now it's negative 500. So it's gotten better by about $1 million. And as a reminder, we decided to give $1 million to the organization to provide additional resources. It hasn't been fully allocated. That's the bar all the way to the right, the $1 million in light blue. We haven't fully allocated it yet, but it is available to the organization. Otherwise, the bars in the middle are exactly the same from the November 2023 update.
But the deficit of 33.6 was what in September?
34.6 roughly.
So we've improved by $1 million. Yep.
That was the OpEx update for fiscal year 24. Here's the CapEx update. The big, huge shout out to Ann and her team. Bottom text box there, you can't really see it on the screen here because the Zoom, but the construction team has materially completed all projects as of January 16, 2024. So huge shout out to them. All projects are materially complete. So, we'll get work orders through. We'll still continue to make payments, but the work has been materially complete at this point. You shouldn't see any major variance from where we are right now, which is roughly negative 30 million. And we are paying that through days cash on hand. So we have the cash to pay for this variance, or sorry, it's negative 20 million. So we will be paying from our balance sheet to be able to fund that, but no change from here on out. And no material change from November 2023. So now we move into fiscal year 25. So we're currently in fiscal year 24. Fiscal year 25, as a reminder, starts July 1st, 2024. We still, as of today, have very unclear state funding, and as of today, the governor has not allocated additional funds for fiscal year 25 for K-2 through 12 public schools. So what does that mean? That means that right now we plan to still have a deficit deficit for this year, and we plan to have a deficit for fiscal year 25, which is what most school districts are in. One of the other things that we did between last November, November 2023, and today, January 2024, is we just confirmed with Oric Hunt and Andrews Kurth, who is our bond counsel, that KIPP Texas Future Fund grants will be included in our covenant. You can click the links there whenever we send the slides out to see the letters that we've gotten from both of them. And we reached out to S&P to confirm that as well.
What's Oric's role?
We just hired Oric just to ensure that when they look through the bond documents and they could confirm that this was going to be included. So we just hired them as external legal counsel for this only this project.
We can take money out of futures fund and it will not impact our rating, right? Or
most likely, but it will be included in our covenant, meaning that revenue will be included. The reason why we're bringing this up is because in the past, KIPP Texas Future Fund has been separate and apart from KIPP Texas, but now that the boards overlap, we consolidate the financials. In the consolidated income statement, any grant from KIPP Texas Future Fund to KIPP Texas is eliminated, so that's why we had to confirm with Oric and Hunt and Andrews Kurth that any grant from KIPP Texas Future Fund will be included in the standalone KIPP Texas income statement, and therefore included in the covenant.
How is the Texas Future Fund funded? I know you talked about grant. How is it funded?
Correct. So in the past, it was a legacy nonprofit separate organization from KIPP Houston, from Houston donors. It has also increased significantly from equity returns. So we invest.
You invest dividends.
Yes, correct. And so as everyone kind of knows now, we're in this raging bull market. Our equities have done really, really well over the last several years. There's a corpus principal amount and then a lot of investment returns.
We folded it under this organization last year.
Okay.
So that being said, here's our fiscal year 25 financial plan. And we put this in the executive pre-read as well, but we're going to be utilizing a significant amount of KIPP Texas Future Fund, which is in a lot of ways our rainy day fund, to support ourselves, support KIPP Texas in fiscal year 25. We plan as of right now to use approximately $23 million, which represents 26% of KIPP Texas Future Fund, though we will simultaneously look for expense reductions as best we can. We have a slide on the expense reductions that we've done over the last several years. We do not, as Jean pointed out, do not believe this will have a material impact on our S&P rating, though our S&P rating is composed of two things, just like every S&P rating, an enterprise profile and a financial profile, but we do not believe that this will impact our financial profile for our S&P rating.
Is there any prospect of incremental funding for the forward school year from the governor?
No.
Can you repeat the question?
I was asking if there was any possibility of the state allocating incremental funding, and the answer was no.
Yeah.
So a little background on this is that obviously we've just been through a session where we've gone through some critical discussions about investment in the academics area, and seeing improvement there. The belief is that the FY26 year, which we'll learn more about as we get into next year, but the FY26 year will provide some kind of funding increase. So instead of going through, a lot of school districts are cutting staff, doing a lot of very tough measures. The belief here is to look for expenses where we can, but use futures fund to bridge us from a no increase in funding to a new year where we believe they will increase funding. Obviously, if in FY '26, the funding, if there's no change in the funding environment, we too will have to go through significant expense reductions. So it's a conscious decision to not go through a cut and then potentially funding comes back and a restaffing. You know, that period of time of cutting and restaffing is incredibly disruptive. So that's the current strategy.
Just to remind myself, we have not had an increase in the state funding since 2019.
Correct.
So despite cost of living and inflation, we are in a very, very difficult funding environment from the state. And it's only with ESSER funds and spending our Texas Future Fund that we're being able to support our students in our schools and our staff at this level. And so it is not an easy picture, but finding a path through it.
And actually, just on that point, one clarification, is this the last year for ESSER?
Technically, no. We still will use ESSER next year. It ends in September 2024.
Okay.
Which is 3 months of fiscal year 25. So there will be likely some rollover due to natural attrition from this year.
But small.
Very small, correct.
Because we will have fully used our allocated ESSER dollars.
We will have fully utilized
Yes.
our, as of September 2024, we will have fully utilized them.
Thank you.
At the end of this fiscal year, there will be some left. We're not exactly sure how much because, well, we can't forecast attrition of employees.
And I think it's just important to note that we're starting to see a lot of districts put out raises for teachers, and they can do that for two reasons. One, they've been able to spread their ESSER dollars over many more years and have a pretty large rainy day fund that they can tap into. And second, they can go into a deficit and we can't because of the way that we're financed and our bond covenants. So, for example, HISD, it was in the Houston Chronicle just about a week ago that they went from a $250 million deficit to this year a $265 million deficit. We don't have the ability to do that and still run as an organization. So we're very limited in what we can do, like other charters, which is why this lack of funding impacts us even more heavily than it would a traditional school district. So we're worried about competition for teachers where other districts are able to provide raises, do these things, and we are strapped in a way that they aren't. That's a huge concern for us going into next year.
Although there are also a number of districts that are looking at closing schools instead of going and expanding their deficits. There are a lot of schools that are having those conversations as well, just as a
correct
benchmarking.
That's right, including San Antonio ISD and others.
Right, so this slide has all our assumptions for fiscal year 25 strategic plan and our proposed solution. So one of the assumptions that Gina already has covered is that this is going to be a bridge financing year. So for fiscal year 25, it will going to be bridge financing, assuming that fiscal year 26, we will receive some sort of permanent funding increase from the state. So that we don't provide volatility to the organization. That we're not, and as Seba alluded to, no additional increases in perpetuity to our OpEx base. So as of right now, the assumption is that no additional salary increases for employees or additional investments in the KIPP Texas budget unless there are corresponding trade-offs. We have our attendance rate there and adjusted enrollment, but we're still working with LMH on that. And then finally, that we are looking at some sort of one-time retention incentive. That way we can possibly dip into our savings a little bit more, provide a retention incentive for our employees, but not increase our OpEx base in perpetuity. Our proposed solution is off to the right, which is, you can see our deficit there, roughly $30 million. Our KIPP Texas Future Fund is going to come in and support for $23 million. We'll utilize our contingency on day one. And then, Gretchen, to your question, there is some ESSER rollover of roughly $3 million that we expect as of right now that we'll use before the September 2024 expiration. So these are all one-time levers, which is why it is important to receive a funding increase for fiscal year 26. And as everyone has said, this is one of the, if not the most arduous year financially that we'll see. Hopefully the most arduous year, and things will get better in fiscal year 26. Yeah, and then so finally, just some historical deficits that we've been running and how we've solved them. In fiscal year 22, 23, 24, and 25, you can see in the orange bar the deficits that we've been running. Fiscal year 22 was covered by both the TEA through an ADA reprieve or enrollment reprieve, and then the ESSER budget gap funding. Fiscal year 23, mostly ESSER covered it with some OpEx reductions. Fiscal year 24, again, the year that we're in, we reduced our OpEx, KIPP Texas Future Fund for some support, ESSER for some support, utilizing our contingency, and then we already covered fiscal year 25. A reminder that we are operating in these deficits as a strategic financial decision that allows us to prioritize academic growth and achievement of our students. It's just like our debt service coverage ratio of 1.2 times. We are making these conscious decisions to invest as many dollars as possible into the organization and our students. So what are the planned benefits of this is that we will keep materially the same staffing for fiscal year 25 while still paying out our bonuses in full, both TCP and the performance bonuses for central office staff. So that's huge. We're going to be able to keep our performance bonuses there while we're maintaining steady operations. We don't believe that this will have a material impact on our S&P rating, but even if it does, a downgrade does not impact us significantly because we will still be investment grade. And then that this plan allows us to take advantage of any potential upside. So if actual attendance or enrollment outperforms, if the legislature comes in with a special session and gives us additional dollars, we have the ability to pivot as quickly as we can or as quickly as we want to. So currently this is the plan, but if things change, we can shift as well. And then finally, just for everyone, for pure edification purposes and just knowledge that we have made reductions to make our deficit more manageable. So you saw the deficits, but these are the reductions that we have made, mostly to central office. And fiscal year 24 was the first year that we took reductions at the school level. So school budgets were reduced in fiscal year 24, but there have been corresponding increases in budgets as well, while we made reductions in budget. So this slide, the biggest takeaway is, look, we made reductions at the central office level and some at the school level while making corresponding increases, but ensuring that our deficit is manageable.
Can you talk some to the makeup of the contingency budget, or you mentioned $5 million for contingency utilization?
So basically, when we build our budget, we take a 1% of total revenue and we make that a contingency.
Okay.
We like to utilize that as an enrollment contingency or an attendance contingency. So throughout the year, if we see any enrollment or attendance volatility, then we can say, okay, we're going to pull from that contingency. Now we're saying, look, we're using that basically day one. So to your point, Patricia, that contingency won't exist at the organizational level. So if we see any volatility at attendance and enrollment, it means near real-time reductions in expenses.
Right. Thank you.
Don, I think it would be helpful, not necessarily today, but as we go forward, to provide some type of ability to look at the fact that we're investing more in instruction and kids and all that. So I don't know if it's number of teaching headcount to students, if that ratio has improved from 22 to 20. What we need to see evidence of that.
Yes, sir.
So I think some type of metrics that show us kind of how the investment's being put back into the organization of some kind.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we can work with Rona on that too, because we have ESSER, which was nearly $100 million of additional academic investments in the organization.
Right, but you'd have to break ESSER out separately because it came and went, right? But we need because you've made that statement quite a bit, and I think the board should see kind of what that means. Say that.
Yeah, we can show it for our organization, but I think the statement of we have a lower debt service coverage ratio is harder to show because that's versus other organizations. But we can show for our organization what investments we've made.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. And also, I'd say special ed, any of the major areas that we just,
All we have.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving to a compliance item. We're going to move to Matthew Marquez, Deputy Chief of Operations, to present our Texas School Safety Center intruder audit findings. Hey, Matt.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. So this is our public summary slide of our most recent audit findings. So since the beginning of the current school year, TA has conducted 28 intruder audits at KIPP Texas schools. 25 of those schools had no external findings, so they had a 100% score and passed. 3 schools had unsecured exterior doors. So the most recent corrective action that must be completed with proof sent to the TEA needs to be done prior to February 4th. And in addition, pertinent staff must be retrained on securing exterior doors. And then just one additional item is versus last year, our pass rate is 90% this year. Last year was 63% at this point in time. That's all for open session.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. The time is now 10:42 a.m. and we will adjourn to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, consultation with board attorney regarding all matters as authorized by law. Texas Government Code 551.074, deliberation regarding appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, dismissal of employees, officers, including the Texas executive team and CEO compensation. Texas Government Code 551.072, deliberate purchase, exchange, value, or lease of real property. Texas Government Code 551.076, safety and security audits, devices, and personnel. We'll return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session. All right, we are now back in open session, and the time is 1:55 p.m. The video is on. Great. We are now ready to consider our consent agenda as sent in the pre-read. Are there any items that any board member wishes to remove from the consent agenda? Any item that is removed could be voted on and discussed separately. Looks like no items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Ethan, second from Jean. Any discussion? Would anyone like to abstain? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The motion to approve the consent agenda passes by a unanimous vote. And the time is now 1:56 p.m. and hearing no objections, our meeting is adjourned.